There is a moment when something doesn't quite land. You say the right words. You speak clearly, calmly, and the person in front of you nods, responds, even smiles. But still, something feels missing. Not in the conversation, but in the connection. It's a moment that passes quickly, barely noticed, easily dismissed, but the body feels it before the mind does. A quiet withdrawal inside, a soft ache behind the ribs. The emotional equivalent of trying to hold eye contact with someone who is looking just past you. You were heard, but you were not felt. This is where it begins for many people. Not with loud rejection, but with subtle misalignment. Not with silence, but with surface-level listening. In time, these moments start to layer. They repeat in different rooms, with different people, in different tones, and the feeling becomes familiar. You are present, you are participating, and yet, you are somehow invisible. It's not that others don't care. They ask questions. They respond. They even remember your words. But the essence of what you were trying to say, the emotional current beneath the words, gets missed. You explain a fear, and they offer solutions. You express excitement, and they change the subject. You hint at sadness, and they laugh it off. They hear you, but they don't meet you, so you begin to adjust. You make your words lighter. You hide the sharp edges of your truth. You use humor to dilute heaviness. You rush past the moments where your voice might tremble. It becomes easier to speak in ways that won't be misunderstood than to speak honestly and be left unmet at some point. The adjustment stops feeling like a choice. It becomes instinct. Your voice learns to bend itself before it even reaches the air. This quiet reshaping happens everywhere. In friendships, in family, at work, in passing conversations. You become fluent in small talk, but emotionally unsatisfied. You show up, but never entirely. You share, but not the parts that really matter, because you've learned that to be fully seen, something unpredictable has to happen. Someone has to stay with you. Not just stay in the room, but stay with your emotion. Not skip over it. Not smooth it out. Not fix it. Just stay, and very few people know how to do that. So you begin to doubt yourself. Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe your feelings are too complex. Maybe you ask for too much from connection. You start filtering not just what you say, but what you feel. You stop bringing your inner world forward because you've come to believe that it might be too heavy, too confusing, or too much work for others. Invisibility, at this point, doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like absence, like being in a room where the lights are on, but the warmth never reaches you. You become good at functioning. You know how to contribute. You know how to be kind, generous, helpful, but something in you begins to go quiet, not out of bitterness, but out of learned caution, because to show yourself over and over again and still feel emotionally missed is its own kind of heartbreak. This is the quiet recognition. The moment someone realizes that being present doesn't guarantee being perceived. That being understood intellectually is not the same as being received emotionally. That words can land while feelings are left suspended. It's a realization that doesn't always hurt loudly. Sometimes it just lingers, soft and persistent. And once it's there, it changes how you speak, how you listen, how you show up in the world. You begin to carry your visibility like something fragile, something that must be protected from being misunderstood again. You continue. You function. You speak, but part of you wonders quietly, constantly, who is actually seeing me? Before invisibility becomes a feeling, it is a pattern. Before it becomes a pattern, it is a response to an environment where visibility was not unsafe, but unrewarded. For many, this begins in childhood, not always in homes of chaos, neglect, or harm. Often, it begins in quiet, orderly spaces, where needs were met, rules were followed, smiles were practiced, but emotional presence, that was a different story. The child speaks, the parent responds, but the response doesn't quite meet the moment. A sadness is met with "you're okay." A joy is met with "be careful." A question is redirected. A feeling is skipped over. No shouting, no violence, no dramatic trauma, just a subtle mismatch, over and over again. This is emotional misattunement. A caregiver hears the words, but misses the feeling. They focus on behavior, not the person beneath it. And so, the child learns, not in words, in nervous system signals. When I show my truth, it doesn't land. When I speak my feelings, they float in the room without a place to settle. So the child starts to shift. They become easier, quieter, more emotionally neutral. They notice that being calm earns approval, that being fine keeps things smooth, that sharing less is easier than sharing and being unseen. They learn to stay close to what is expected, because expected things are safe, predictable things are praised, and this is where invisibility takes root. Not because the child disappears, but because only certain versions of them are reflected back. The loud version is too much. The sensitive version is dramatic. The excited version is distracting. The sad version is ungrateful. So, they offer the edited self, the parts that fit, the feelings that won't ripple, and slowly, they stop expecting resonance. Some children grow up in homes where parents are emotionally overwhelmed, too distracted, too anxious, too caught in their own pain to notice what lives inside their child. In these homes, the child may not be corrected, they are simply missed. They come home with something to share and no one looks up. They speak and no one fully listens. They feel deeply and no one knows. And in that silence, they begin to feel like ghosts, moving through rooms, speaking in plain language, but slowly fading into emotional transparency. They might become the good kid, the one who doesn't make trouble, who gets things done, who smiles at the right times, but that goodness is not rooted in self-expression. It is rooted in self-suppression, because it's easier to manage yourself than to ask others to meet what they've never been able to. Others grow up with love that was conditional, love tied to performance, to grades, to manners, to silence. They learn that their emotional world must be polished, edited, and presented with care, so they become skilled at watching others. They become intuitive, perceptive, wise beyond their years. But that wisdom is not free. It was learned at the cost of visibility, because they were too busy decoding others to ever feel fully known themselves. As they grow older, these children become adults, and the adaptation follows them. In conversations, they smile, they nod, they say the right things, but inside they are scanning. Is it safe to share this part of me? Will this land, or will it float away again? Will they feel me, or just hear me? This is where invisibility begins, in the space between expression and reception, in the gap between words and resonance, in the thousands of small moments when a child realizes that being known is uncertain, and therefore optional, not because they wanted to disappear, but because staying visible stopped feeling worth the effort. And so, long before they could name the feeling, they began to live inside it. Not all pain announces itself. Some pain hides in clarity, in knowing how to speak, in knowing how to explain, in knowing exactly what to say, and still feeling that no one is truly with you. People who feel invisible often live here, in the strange space where communication is strong, but connection is thin, where language flows, but emotional presence is absent. To understand this, you must understand what it means to be felt. Being felt is more than being understood. It is not about being correct, or even about being listened to. It is about resonance. To be felt is to say something, a truth, a memory, a quiet ache, and have another nervous system mirror it back without effort. It is a warmth in the room, a stillness in the silence, a shift in the eyes that says, "I'm with you. I feel that too." This is not always verbal. Sometimes it shows up in body language. Sometimes in the way someone doesn't rush to respond. Sometimes in the absence of advice, or interruption, or performance. It is a presence. When that presence is missing, even when the conversation is active, the body feels it. And over time, it learns to expect that absence. Psychologically, this is a form of emotional neglect. Not the loud, harmful kind, but the subtle kind. The kind where a person receives just enough attention to function, but never enough attunement to feel truly known. Attachment theory offers language for this. When caregivers are inconsistent, distracted, or emotionally unresponsive, children develop internal models that say, "My emotions are mine to manage. Others will not stay with me when I feel deeply. I must self-regulate, or I will be left alone." And so, the child learns to turn inward. They become independent, not just in tasks, but in feeling. This independence follows them into adulthood. They know how to hold space for others. They know how to be strong, steady, supportive. But when it's their turn, when their own emotions rise, they feel unsure. Not unsure of what they feel, but unsure if anyone will meet them there. This creates a pattern. They speak in ways that protect others from the depth of their feelings. They share in measured doses. They translate emotion into logic. They avoid overwhelming others, even when they themselves are overwhelmed. This is not because they are cold or distant. It's because they've learned, deep in their nervous system, that full expression is often followed by absence. And so, to be safe, they become self-contained. But the hunger to be felt never leaves. It shows up in conversations that leave them tired, in relationships that feel slightly out of tune, in the way they carry joy, grief, hope, always with one hand, still holding the weight, alone. Being unfelt is not about being ignored. It is about being emotionally unregistered. The world sees their behavior, but misses their being. People respond to what they do, but overlook what they need. And this mismatch, this endless loop of being understood, but not received, is what deepens the sense of invisibility. It is exhausting to explain feelings that no one seems to sense. It is lonely to translate what should be intuitively shared. It is painful to offer truth, only to feel it skim the surface of the room. This is the psychology of being unfelt. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is constant, and it is deeply human. Because at our core, we are not just wired for understanding. We are wired for a TTUNEMENT. To speak and be mirrored, to feel and be joined, to exist without having to justify our own emotional presence. When this doesn't happen, A person doesn't stop expressing, they just learn to do it with less hope. There is a subtle war inside people who feel invisible, not the kind that tears through their lives loudly, but the kind that whispers beneath every conversation. It is the quiet tension between wanting to be seen and fearing the cost of being misunderstood, between expressing what's real and editing it into something more digestible. This conflict does not start in adulthood. It begins the first time someone shares something vulnerable and is met with a response that doesn't land. A blank stare, a quick solution, a change of subject. Something in the body recoils. It says, "That was too much. That didn't go where I hoped. Maybe it's better if I don't share like that again." So the person begins to rehearse their expression. They think before they feel before they speak. And by the time the words come out, the emotion behind them has already been diluted. This is not dishonesty. It's self-protection. They become skilled at shaping their inner world into forms that are easier for others to hold. They soften their grief with humor. They coat their sadness in intellect. They clip their anger into quiet observations. The result: they are praised for being articulate, for being emotionally mature, for being composed, but deep inside, they feel unknown. Because what people are responding to isn't the raw truth. It's the refined version, the manageable version, the version shaped for clarity and comfort. And when that version is praised, it reinforces a quiet message. This is the only version of me that is allowed to be visible. So they keep editing, not just their speech, but their presence. They become good listeners. They become emotionally available to others. They become the friend people come to for insight and warmth. But when it's their turn to open up, they hesitate. They know what to say. They know how to say it. But they don't know if it's safe to say it unfiltered. Because what if it lands the wrong way? What if they're too intense, too deep, too sensitive? This inner questioning grows louder in close relationships. When vulnerability matters more, the stakes feel higher, so they perform a strange dance, wanting to be known, and yet only offering parts of themselves, parts they're sure will be received well. This is the root of emotional performance, not the dramatic kind, but the subtle, intelligent kind, where expression is carefully shaped to avoid disconnection. It's exhausting because behind every sentence is a second one, unspoken. Behind every answer is a longer one, edited for safety. Behind every smile is a part of them wondering, did they really see me, or just the version I allowed them to see? Over time, this inner conflict breeds emotional fatigue. They may start withdrawing, not completely, just enough to feel protected. They stay present, but guarded, engaged, but cautious, open, but never fully. This creates a paradox in their relationships. People feel close to them, but they don't always feel close in return. Because emotional closeness isn't just about being available, it's about being witnessed. And witnessing requires risk. The risk of showing something unscripted, something unresolved, something raw. The person who feels invisible knows this risk too well. They've taken it before and been left unmet. So they tread carefully, but still they long. For a moment when they don't have to shape the sentence first. For a space where feeling doesn't need formatting. For someone who hears the words, but listens for what lives beneath them. Until then, they carry the tension. They express just enough to not feel alone, but not so much that they feel exposed. It is a delicate balance, a quiet negotiation, a learned habit of survival. and it keeps them just far enough from the one thing they truly crave, to be seen, without performance. There comes a quiet moment, not always dramatic, not always painful, but clear. A shift in awareness, a turning inward that whispers, "This has been happening for a long time." This feeling of not being fully seen, it didn't start here. This is the moment of realization, the point where the pattern reveals itself, not just in one relationship, not just in one conversation, but across time. It might be triggered by something small, a conversation that leaves them strangely hollow, a friend who responds but doesn't stay, a partner who listens but never really lands, or maybe nothing happens at all. Maybe it arrives in stillness, in the pause after trying once again to be understood, and feeling that familiar, invisible ache echo back. In this moment, they stop asking, "What did I do wrong? Was I too much? Did I explain it the wrong way?" And they begin asking, "Why does this always feel the same? Why do I keep ending up in this place unmet, unheld, unmerged?" This is where the lens shifts, from self-blame to self-recognition, from what's wrong with me, to what did I adapt to survive? Because now, the pattern is visible, and with it, the emotional history behind it. They begin to see their younger self, the child who edited feelings for safety, who became composed to avoid rejection, who used words to connect when presence was never mirrored. They remember the conversations that felt empty, the moments when they cried quietly in the next room, the time they were praised for being so mature when all they wanted was to be held. These moments didn't seem like trauma. They didn't leave bruises. They didn't scream, but they shaped something deep, something silent, something that taught them not to expect resonance. And so they grew up fluent in clarity, but unsure in closeness. In this realization, there is no explosion. There is softness, grief, maybe, but also relief, because for the first time, it isn't personal. It isn't failure. It's memory. Their nervous system remembers what their mind couldn't explain. That expression often led to emptiness. That emotion was something to manage, not to share, so they stopped sharing. Not entirely just enough to stay protected. Realization doesn't fix the pattern, but it dissolves the shame around it, and that is everything. Because when someone sees the origin of their invisibility, they begin to stop internalizing it. They stop thinking they're hard to love. They stop thinking they're too complex. They stop thinking they're asking for too much. They begin to see that their way of speaking, measured, thoughtful, composed, was never about lack. It was about history, about learning how to exist without being felt, and surviving anyway. This moment also brings grief. Grief for all the versions of themselves that tried to connect and were met with silence. Grief for all the times they twisted themselves into clarity, hoping someone would stay. Grief for how much love they've given without knowing if it was ever truly seen. But underneath that grief is something gentle, an opening, because once the pattern is named, it is no longer the only story. Once they understand where it came from, they can begin to consciously, quietly, if they still want to live by it. Not all at once, not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in slow, ordinary moments. Moments when they pause before reshaping their words. Moments when they let the emotion exist without translation. Moments when they speak, not to be understood, but simply to be honest. And in these moments, visibility begins to return, not because others suddenly become more attuned, but because the person begins to see themselves clearly, without editing, without shrinking, without shame. And that kind of seeing is where real presence begins. After a lifetime of shaping yourself into something quieter, softer, easier to hold, learning to take up space can feel like a foreign language, not physical space, not performance, but emotional space. The permission to exist fully, with depth, with feeling, without filtering for comfort. This chapter of the journey is slow, not because the desire to be visible isn't strong, but because the instincts to remain small are even stronger. They've been practiced for years, refined in conversation, rewarded in relationships, and now something is shifting. Something inside is tired of translating all the time. Something wants to speak without rehearsing, to feel without apologizing, to exist without folding. But learning this kind of presence isn't loud. It doesn't look like dramatic expression. It often begins in quiet moments, choosing to answer honestly instead of politely, allowing silence to linger instead of rushing to fill it, pausing before editing a thought just to make it easier for someone else. These are small acts of reclamation, and each one is a signal to the nervous system. It's safe to show up now. You don't have to shrink to belong. Yet, emotional expansion can feel uncomfortable at first, because being small became familiar, and what is familiar often feels like safety, even when it's actually self-erasure. So at first, taking up space feels risky. They speak and wonder if they've said too much. They express something tender and brace for dismissal. They share a truth and feel exposed afterward, even if no one responded poorly. This is part of the process, because the wound wasn't just that others didn't see them. It's that they stopped expecting to be seen at all. Now, the inner landscape begins to change. The person starts noticing when they're performing closeness instead of actually being close. They catch themselves softening their language unnecessarily. They feel the difference between sharing to connect versus sharing to be accepted. It's subtle, but it's powerful. They begin to ask new questions. What would I say if I wasn't afraid of being misunderstood? What part of me have I never let take up room? Where have I been too careful with my own truth? And slowly, they practice. They tell the longer version of the story. They let the emotion come without cutting it in half. They cry in front of someone even if it makes the moment awkward. They say this matters to me even when no one else seems to care. This practice isn't about forcing others to understand. It's about no longer abandoning yourself in the hope that they will, because something begins to heal when you realize you don't have to translate your worth into smaller, more acceptable pieces. You begin to live differently, not louder, but truer. You walk into rooms without scanning for who you need to be. You stop over-explaining your emotions. You let yourself exist in the full weight of who you are, without the urge to apologize for it. This doesn't mean every space is safe. It doesn't mean every person will know how to meet you, but it does mean that your visibility is no longer conditional. It is no longer something others grant you. It is something you begin to allow for yourself. You stop asking, do they see me? And you start wondering, am I showing up fully, whether they do or not? That shift from performance to presence, from cautious expression to embodied truth, is where emotional space is finally reclaimed. And in that space, you begin to breathe differently, because now, your voice is not an edited version of your existence. It is simply yours. There is a kind of seeing that doesn't ask for explanation. It doesn't require performance. It doesn't need you to make sense. It simply recognizes you as you are. for someone who has spent a lifetime fine-tuning their presence. This kind of seeing can feel disorienting at first, like standing in a room with no mirrors, no filters, no expectations, and still being held in view. This is what it means to be seen without performance, to show up, not as a version, but as a whole. Not as a role, the helper, the thinker, the kind one, but as a person, with contradictions, with longing, with softness. People who have lived with emotional invisibility often confuse performance with connection. They've learned to anticipate what others need, to adjust tone, to read the room, to express in ways that are efficient, palatable, polite. They become excellent at giving others the version of themselves that will be best received. And when that version is affirmed, when others say, "You're so clear, you're so wise, you're so easy to be around," a strange kind of grief follows, because the deeper truth remains untouched. The messy truth, the emotional one, the version that didn't rehearse, the version that just is. To be seen without performance means trusting that you can stop curating, that your worth is not in how you present, but in how you exist. It means allowing moments of awkwardness, of silence, of not knowing what to say next. It means letting your voice tremble without catching it, letting your sadness linger in a conversation without rushing to clean it up, letting your joy take up space even if it doesn't match the room. It means being emotionally present without shaping yourself for emotional approval. This is not something that happens overnight, and it cannot be manufactured, because it isn't about doing more. It's about doing less, less editing, less explaining, less proving, just presence. Being seen this way often begins internally. When you start meeting your own emotions without commentary, when you stop translating your sadness into something prettier, when you say to yourself, "This is how I feel," and that is enough. From there, something softens. You begin to allow others to meet you where you are, without apology. Without preface, you begin to recognize that the people who stay, who listen quietly, who don't interrupt your truth with solutions or discomfort, those are the ones who are safe to be seen by. And perhaps more importantly, you stop chasing resonance in people who were never taught how to feel deeply in the first place. You stop bending. You stop whispering your needs in rooms that only respond to silence. And in that stillness, something emerges, a kind of peace that was never available when you were constantly managing your reflection. Now you are simply present. You speak without shrinking. You cry without guilt. You love without rehearsing. You become the kind of presence you once longed for, seen not because you earned it, but because you stopped hiding, visible, not because you performed well, but because you remembered your existence was always enough. And the final truth is this: invisibility begins in the absence of emotional reflection. But healing begins the moment you stop looking outward for confirmation of who you are, and begin, instead, to live like you never needed to explain yourself in the first place.